The inspection grounds reeked of power and perfection. 300 wolves stood in pristine lines beneath the morning sun, their formal pack attire pressed and gleaming, their heads held high with the confidence that came from belonging to something greater than themselves. They were members of the Shadow Peak Pack, one of the strongest in the Northern Territories, and they knew it. At the very back, separated by 20 feet of empty ground that might as well have been an ocean, stood the Omega line. Athena kept her eyes down, her threadbare dress hanging loose on her thin frame. The fabric patched so many times, the original color was impossible to determine. Her feet were bare and dirty, her dark hair pulled into a braid that did little to hide how desperately it needed washing. She didn't belong here. She didn't belong anywhere. The she-wolf beside her, an Omega named Margot who at least had shoes, shifted uncomfortably. Why is the Alpha King himself coming? It's usually just the regional alphas who do inspections. Athena didn't answer. She'd learned long ago that speaking only drew attention, and attention for an Omega like her, one without a pack, without a home, without even the basic dignity of regular meals, was never good. "Look at them!" a voice carried across the inspection grounds, dripping with disdain. "Standing there like they matter." Nora. Of course it was Nora. Athena risked a glance up. Nora Whitmore stood in the front row of the elite line, the section reserved for high-ranking she-wolves of alpha bloodlines. She was beautiful in the way a knife was beautiful, all sharp edges and cold precision. Her platinum blonde hair was styled in elaborate waves, her inspection dress custom-fitted to show off her warrior's physique. She was the daughter of Shadow Peak's Beta, and she made sure everyone knew it. "Silence in the ranks!" one of the pack's senior warriors barked. But Nora's ice-blue eyes remained fixed on the Omega line, a cruel smile playing at her lips. She'd been making Athena's life hell for the 3 months since Athena had shown up at Shadow Peak's borders, half-starved and desperate for any scrap of work that might keep her alive through the winter. The pack had grudgingly allowed her to stay, but only barely. She slept in the barn with the horses, ate whatever scraps the pack kitchen threw out, and worked sunrise to sunset doing the jobs no one else would touch. Scrubbing blood from the training grounds, hauling waste, mending the fence lines in the freezing rain. She was invisible. Less than invisible. She was the kind of Omega that alphas looked through, the kind that other Omegas pitied, the kind that pack wolves used as a cautionary tale for their children. Be grateful for your place in the pack. You could end up like her. And now, for reasons Athena couldn't fathom, she'd been ordered to attend the Alpha King's inspection. "Attention!" The voice rang out like a bell, and 300 wolves snapped to rigid stillness. Athena's heart hammered in her chest. She could feel her wolf stirring uneasily beneath her skin, the creature that had been her only companion since her parents died when she was 6. The wolves of the forest had raised her, taught her to hunt, to survive, to stay hidden from the pack territories that would never accept a lone Omega child. She'd lived that way for 16 years, until a harsh winter and an injury had driven her to Shadow Peak's borders, pride abandoned in favor of survival. The Alpha King's entourage appeared at the far end of the inspection grounds. Even from a distance, Athena could feel the weight of his power. It rolled across the field like thunder, making her Omega instinct scream at her to drop to her knees, to bare her throat, to submit to the overwhelming dominance that announced an alpha of alphas. Victor Steele. She'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. He'd united the Northern Territories 5 years ago, ending decades of interpack warfare. He was ruthless, brilliant, and terrifyingly powerful. He'd killed challengers with his bare hands, negotiated peace treaties that seemed impossible, and ruled his expanded kingdom with an iron fist wrapped in calculated strategy. He was also unmated, which had caused a feeding frenzy among every ambitious she-wolf with alpha blood, including Nora. "Shadow Peak Pack!" The king's voice carried effortlessly across the grounds, rich and commanding without being raised. "I come to assess your strength, your unity, and your readiness to serve the Northern Kingdom." Athena felt the words vibrate in her chest. His power was like nothing she'd ever encountered, not even in the wild alpha wolves of the deep forest. This was something else entirely, something ancient and absolute. "Alpha King." Shadow Peak's Alpha stepped forward, bowing his head. "Shadow Peak stands ready for your inspection. Our warriors are trained, our hierarchy is strong, our pack bonds are unbreakable." "We shall see." The inspection began. Victor moved down the elite line first, his eyes sharp and assessing as he evaluated each wolf. He was tall, powerfully built, with dark hair and features that would have been handsome if they weren't so severe. He wore simple black clothing that somehow made him look more dangerous than all the formal military dress around him. When he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a predator who knew exactly how lethal he was. Behind him walked his personal guard, 4 massive warriors who watched everything with the paranoid intensity of wolves who'd kept their king alive through assassination attempts and political coups. Athena tried to make herself smaller. If she was lucky, the inspection wouldn't even include the Omega line. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes Omegas were considered so far beneath notice that they were simply ignored. "Alpha King," Nora's voice rang out, crystal clear and perfectly pitched. "Shadow Peak is honored by your presence. We hope you'll find our pack worthy of your continued protection." Victor's gaze moved to her briefly. "Nora Whitmore, your father speaks highly of your combat scores." Athena saw Nora's eyes light up with triumph. "I live to serve the kingdom, Alpha King, in whatever capacity you might need." The implication was clear enough to make several wolves shift uncomfortably. But Victor's expression didn't change. He simply moved on, continuing his inspection with methodical precision. He evaluated the elite line, then the warrior line, then the specialists, healers, scouts, trackers. He asked questions, tested reflexes, observed pack dynamics with the keen eye of someone who could read power structures the way others read books. And then, inevitably, his gaze moved to the Omega line. Athena's stomach dropped. "These Omegas are part of your pack structure?" Victor asked, his tone making it unclear whether he approved or disapproved. "Yes, Alpha King," Shadow Peak's Alpha responded. "They serve support functions, maintenance, basic labor, child-minding for the working parents." "And her?" Victor's eyes had fixed on something at the back of the Omega line. On her. Athena felt the weight of his stare like a physical thing. Her wolf surged forward suddenly, unexpectedly, pressing against her skin with a desperation she didn't understand. "Run," her instinct screamed. "Hide. He'll destroy us." But her feet wouldn't move. "She's not technically pack, Alpha King," Shadow Peak's Alpha said, and Athena could hear the distaste in his voice. "She showed up at our borders 3 months ago. We allowed her to stay in exchange for labor. She's harmless, barely worth mentioning." "She sleeps in the barn with the animals," Nora called out helpfully, her voice dripping with false concern. "We've been very charitable, allowing such a creature to remain on Packlands. Athena felt her face burn with humiliation. 300 pairs of eyes were on her now, and she could feel their judgment, their pity, their disgust. "Come here." The words cut through the air like a blade, and Athena knew they were meant for her. Her legs trembled as she stepped forward, leaving the Omega line and walking across that vast empty space that separated her from the rest of the pack. Each step felt like an eternity. She could hear whispers, see heads turning, feel the weight of collective attention pressing down on her like a physical force. When she reached the front, she dropped immediately to her knees and bowed her head, the submissive posture so ingrained in her that it was automatic. Her heart was pounding so hard, she thought it might break through her ribs. "Look at me." She couldn't. She couldn't possibly look an Alpha King in the eyes. It went against everything she'd learned, everything that had kept her alive. "I said, look at me." Slowly, painfully, Athena raised her eyes, and the world stopped. The moment their gazes met, something slammed into her chest with the force of a lightning strike. Her wolf screamed, not in fear, but in recognition, in desperate, overwhelming need. The bond snapped into place like a rope pulled taut, connecting her to this terrifyingly powerful alpha in a way that made her previous understanding of pack bonds seem like a pale shadow. Mate. No. No, that was impossible. Alpha Kings didn't have Omega mates, especially not Omegas like her, packless, powerless, worthless. But her wolf didn't care about logic. Her wolf was howling with joy, with completion, with the absolute certainty that she was staring at her other half. Victor's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. In them, she saw shock, recognition, and something that looked almost like pain. He felt it too. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The inspection grounds were silent, except for the wind rustling through the trees beyond the clearing. Then, slowly, deliberately, Victor Steele, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of 12 packs, the most powerful wolf in 1,000 miles, lowered himself to one knee before her. The gasp that rippled through the crowd was audible. "What is he doing?" someone whispered. "This is inappropriate." Nora's voice cut through the silence like shattered glass. But Victor didn't look away from Athena. He reached out, his hand stopping just inches from her face, as if he was afraid she might shatter if he touched her. "What is your name?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Athena." "Athena." He said it like a prayer, like a promise, like the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. Then, to everyone's absolute shock, he bowed his head to her. "My mate." The chaos was immediate. "Impossible!" Shadow Peak's Alpha stepped forward, his face red with anger or embarrassment or both. "Alpha King, there must be some mistake. She's nobody. She's not even pack. She's mine." Victor's voice dropped to a growl that made every wolf on the inspection grounds bare their throat in submission. "She is mine, and if anyone has a problem with that, they can challenge me here and now." No one moved. No one was stupid enough to challenge an Alpha King, especially not Victor Steele. But Nora looked like she might actually try. Her face had gone white, then red, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "This is madness! She's an Omega! A packless Omega who sleeps in filth! You can't possibly—" "I can, and I will." Victor stood, his hand now moving to Athena's shoulder, helping her to her feet with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so dangerous. "She is my fated mate, and therefore she is your queen. I suggest you adjust your tone accordingly." Athena's mind was spinning. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to wolves like her. Fated mates were rare enough, but for an alpha king to be mated to a Packless Omega? It defied every law of their society, every hierarchy, every rule. "There must be a mistake," she whispered, so quietly that only Victor could hear. "I'm nothing. I can't be." "You are everything." His hand squeezed her shoulder gently. "And we will discuss this properly, but not here. Not in front of these wolves who've treated you with such disgrace." He turned to face the assembly, and even from behind him, Athena could feel his fury radiating outward in waves. "Shadow Peak Pack, I am disappointed. You've housed my mate, your future queen, in a barn. You've starved her, degraded her, treated her as less than pack when she should have been treasured above all others. We didn't know, Alpha King. How could we possibly have known? You knew she was Omega. You knew she was alone. You knew she was vulnerable. Whether she was my mate or not, your treatment of her speaks to a failure of pack values that I will not tolerate in my kingdom." He paused, letting that sink in. "Shadow Peak will undergo a full review. Your alpha will answer for this personally, and if I find that any wolf here has actively harmed her, they will face my judgment." The silence was absolute. Athena could see wolves exchanging terrified glances. Shadow Peak had just gone from honored host of a royal inspection to a pack under investigation, and it was all because of her. She wanted to disappear. She wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. "Come." Victor's hand moved to the small of her back, a possessive gesture that sent sparks racing up her spine. "We're leaving. You'll never sleep in that barn again." As he guided her toward his waiting entourage, Athena looked back once at the inspection grounds, at the 300 wolves standing in their perfect lines, their faces showing varying degrees of shock, anger, and disbelief. At Nora, whose expression had gone beyond fury into something cold and calculating that made Athena's blood run cold. This wasn't over. Whatever had just happened, whatever impossible twist of fate had bound her to the most powerful alpha in the territories, it had just made her a target for every ambitious wolf who'd wanted Victor for themselves. And she had no idea how to protect herself from what was coming. Victor's car was unlike anything Athena had ever seen. Sleek, black, with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. His guards opened the door, and he helped her in with a careful touch, as if she was made of glass. The interior smelled like leather and pine and something else, something that made her wolf purr with contentment. His scent. It was everywhere, wrapping around her like a blanket. He slid in beside her, and the door closed, sealing them in sudden, unexpected privacy. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Athena sat rigidly, her hands folded in her lap, hyper-aware of every inch of space between them, of the way the mate bond was pulling at her, urging her to move closer, to touch him, to... "I need you to understand something." Victor's voice was different now, without the audience of the pack, quieter, but no less intense. "I didn't plan this. I didn't expect this. But the bond doesn't lie. You are my fated mate, and I will honor that above all else." "But I don't understand. How can this be real? You're the Alpha King. I'm nobody." "You're not nobody. Not to me. Not anymore." He paused, and she could see him struggling with something. The bond chooses what it chooses. Bloodlines, status, power, none of that matters to fate. Everyone will hate this. They'll say you're making a mistake, that I'm not worthy. Let them say it to my face. His hand moved to cup her chin, tilting her face toward his, and the contact sent electricity racing through her entire body. I've spent 5 years building this kingdom, Athena. 5 years of political marriages being thrown at me, of alliances contingent on who I chose as queen, of everyone assuming my mate would be some alpha-blooded she-wolf with perfect lineage and combat scores. And you know what? I rejected every single one of them because none of them felt right. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the gesture achingly gentle. And then I see you, standing in that omega line, trying to make yourself invisible, and everything in me knows. You're it. You're what I've been waiting for. Athena felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd been alone for so long, unwanted for so long, that having someone look at her like this, like she mattered, like she was precious, was almost painful. I don't know how to be a queen. You'll learn. I'll teach you. And anyone who has a problem with it will answer to me. He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. No one will ever hurt you again. I swear it on my life. The car began to move, pulling away from Shadow Peak's territory. Through the tinted windows, Athena watched the Packlands disappear, the barn where she'd slept for 3 months fading into the distance. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt terror. Because she knew the truth that Victor's confidence couldn't change. She wasn't ready for this. She didn't have the training, the education, the grace, the power. She was a Packless Omega who'd been raised by wild wolves, who could barely read, who didn't know the first thing about politics or hierarchy, or how to navigate the deadly currents of pack society. And now she was supposed to be queen. The journey to Victor's estate took 3 hours. He spent most of it on a phone, dealing with what sounded like urgent pack business in a language of strategic decisions and territorial negotiations that went completely over her head. But even while he worked, his hand stayed on hers, his thumb occasionally stroking across her knuckles in a gesture that seemed unconscious, but that made her wolf hum with contentment. When they finally arrived, Athena's breath caught in her throat. The estate was massive, a sprawling compound of stone and timber that looked more like a fortress than a home. It sat on a hilltop overlooking a valley filled with forest, the late afternoon sun painting everything in shades of gold and amber. "Welcome to Shadowmere," Victor said as the car pulled through massive iron gates. "This is the capital of the Northern Kingdom. And now, it's your home." Guards were everywhere, she realized, patrolling the walls, watching from towers, standing at attention as the car passed. This wasn't just a home. It was a military installation. The car stopped in front of the main entrance, and Victor helped her out. His hand stayed at her back as he guided her up the stone steps, through doors that were easily 15 feet tall, and into an entrance hall that made her head spin with its sheer scale. "Helena?" A woman appeared almost immediately, dressed in elegant professional attire, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd been managing the chaos of a royal household for decades. "Alpha King, we didn't expect you back until tomorrow. I haven't prepared—" She stopped, her eyes moving to Athena, and something like understanding crossed her face. "Oh. Helena, this is Athena, my mate. She'll need rooms prepared immediately, a full wardrobe, and someone to help her settle in. And send for Dr. Marin. I want her checked over to make sure she's healthy." Helena's expression shifted to concern as she took in Athena's appearance. The threadbare dress, the too thin frame, the bare feet. Of course, Alpha King, right away. She turned to Athena with a warm smile. It's an honor to meet you. Please come with me, we'll get you comfortable. I'll see you at dinner, Victor said, his hand lingering on hers for a moment longer than necessary. We have much to discuss. Athena followed Helena through corridors that seemed to go on forever, up a grand staircase, down another hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking alphas. Finally, they reached a set of double doors that Helena opened to reveal a suite of rooms that was bigger than the entire barn where Athena had been living. These will be your quarters, Helena explained, gesturing around at the sitting room, the bedroom visible through another doorway, what looked like a bathroom beyond that. Though I imagine once the mating is complete, you'll be moving to the Alpha King's chambers. But for now, this should give you some space to adjust. Athena just stood there, overwhelmed. The furniture alone probably cost more than she'd seen in her entire life. Everything was rich fabrics and polished wood and artwork that looked important. I know this must be overwhelming, Helena said softly. Why don't we start with a bath? I'll have some clean clothes brought up, and Dr. Marin will be here within the hour. The bath was a revelation. Hot water that didn't run out, soap that smelled like lavender, towels that were soft beyond imagining. Helena had left her alone to wash, and Athena had stayed in the massive tub until the water started to cool, scrubbing away 3 months of dirt and humiliation. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a robe that felt like wearing a cloud, she found a simple dress laid out on the bed, nothing fancy, but clean and new and in her size. There were undergarments, too, and soft slippers for her feet. She was just finishing getting dressed when a knock came at the door. "May I come in?" a woman's voice called. "Yes." Dr. Marin was younger than Athena expected, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and capable hands. She carried a medical bag and smiled reassuringly as she entered. "Hello, Athena. I'm Dr. Marin, the pack physician. The Alpha King asked me to check on you, make sure you're healthy. Is that all right?" Athena nodded, too overwhelmed to do much else. The examination was thorough but gentle. Dr. Marin checked her vital signs, looked in her eyes and ears and throat, palpated her abdomen, listened to her heart and lungs. Her expression grew increasingly concerned as she worked. "You're malnourished," she said finally, her tone professional but compassionate. "Significantly underweight. I'm seeing signs of chronic hunger. Your body's been in survival mode for a while. How long have you been living on insufficient food?" Athena thought about it. "Since my parents died. 16 years, I guess. It was better in the forest. I could hunt. But at Shadow Peak, I only got scraps." Dr. Marin's jaw tightened. "Well, that ends now. I'm putting you on a nutrition plan. Small, frequent meals to start. We need to be careful not to overwhelm your system. And supplements. You're also showing signs of old injuries that didn't heal properly. That shoulder, for instance. You broke it at some point?" "When I was 12. Fell from a tree hunting. It healed wrong. We might be able to correct some of that with physical therapy, but it's going to be a process." She packed up her bag and gave Athena a warm smile. "But you're strong. Stronger than you probably realize. Your wolf kept you alive through things that would have killed most omegas. That's not nothing." After Dr. Marin left, Athena found herself alone with her thoughts for the first time since the inspection. She walked to the window, looking out over the valley as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. This morning, she'd woken up in a barn, expecting another day of back-breaking labor and hunger and invisibility. Tonight, she was in a palace, being called queen, mated to the most powerful alpha in the territories. It felt like a dream. The kind of dream she'd have to wake up from eventually, only to find herself back in the reality of cold straw, an empty stomach, and endless, grinding survival. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. "Athena? May I come in?" Victor. "Yes." He entered, and she realized he'd changed clothes, now wearing casual pants and a simple shirt that somehow made him look even more intimidating than the formal inspection attire. In his hands, he carried a tray. "I thought we might eat here tonight, more private." He set the tray down on a small table near the window. "I know Helena said dinner would be served in the formal dining room, but I figured you've had enough overwhelming experiences for one day." The smell hit her then. Real food, hot and abundant. Her stomach growled loudly enough that Victor smiled. "Dr. Marin gave me very specific instructions about your diet. Small portions, nothing too rich, so I raided the kitchen and brought options." They sat together and Athena ate slowly, careful not to make herself sick. There was soup, bread, roasted vegetables, fresh fruit. Each bite was a revelation. She'd forgotten food could taste like this. Victor watched her eat with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "Tell me about yourself. I want to know everything." So she told him. About her parents dying when she was 6, killed by a bear that had wandered too close to their isolated den. About being raised by wild wolves who taught her to hunt and hide and survive. About 16 years of living in the forest, never quite belonging to the wolf pack that had saved her, but never fully alone either. About the injury last winter that had made hunting impossible. About the desperation that had finally driven her to Shadow Peak's borders. "And they put you in a barn." "They didn't have to let me stay at all." "They should have welcomed you, protected you, given you a place in the pack." His hand clenched into a fist. "Instead, they degraded you, starved you, made you into a cautionary tale." "That's what Omegas like me are for. Reminders of what happens when you don't have a pack." "No, that's what happens when packs forget their purpose. We're supposed to be stronger together. Supposed to protect the vulnerable, not exploit them." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window, and Athena could see the tension in his shoulders. "I need you to understand something. The Northern Kingdom that I built, it's supposed to be better than this. I united the packs to end the wars, yes, but also to create a society where strength didn't just mean combat prowess, where Omegas had value beyond servitude." He turned back to her, his eyes intense. "And now my mate, the woman who's supposed to stand beside me as queen, has been sleeping in a barn because the very packs I'm trying to reform couldn't see her worth. Do you understand what that means? That I'm going to make things difficult for you? That the work isn't done. That I've been so focused on treaties and territorial disputes that I've been blind to the rot still existing in pack structures. That I need to do better." He came back to her, kneeling beside her chair so their eyes were level. "You are not a burden. You are not a mistake. You are my mate, chosen by fate itself. And if the packs can't accept that, then they need to change, not you. Athena felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked and frozen for as long as she could remember. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You survived 16 years alone. You kept your dignity when wolves tried to strip it from you. You stood in that inspection line with your head up even though you were terrified. That's strength, Athena. Real strength. But I can barely read. I don't know politics or strategy or how to navigate pack hierarchies. I don't know how to be a queen. Then we'll teach you. Helena can help with protocols and etiquette. My advisors can tutor you in governance and law, and I'll be beside you every step of the way. He leaned closer, his forehead touching hers in a gesture that made her wolf sing. We're in this together now, you and me, mates. The word sent a shiver through her entire body. Mates. It meant forever. It meant belonging. It meant never being alone again. But it also meant danger. Nora looked like she wanted to kill me. Victor's expression darkened. Nora Whitmore has been angling to become queen since I took the throne. She's not the only one, but she's the most persistent. And yes, now that I've found my true mate, she's going to be a problem. What if she tries something? Then she'll discover exactly what happens to wolves who threaten what's mine. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close in a gesture that felt both possessive and comforting. I've survived assassination attempts, coups, and pack wars. I'm not going to let some ambitious she-wolf harm my mate. They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the mate bond humming between them like a living thing. Athena could feel it pulling at her, urging her closer, deeper, toward the completion that would seal their bonds permanently. But Victor was being careful, she realized. Despite the bond, despite the obvious attraction, he wasn't pushing. He was giving her space to adjust, to accept, to choose. I should let you rest. It's been a long day, and Dr. Marin said you need sleep. Stay. The word came out before she could stop it, and she felt her face flush. I mean, could you stay? Just for a little while? I don't want to be alone. The smile that crossed his face was soft, genuine, nothing like the stern alpha king the rest of the world saw. I'll stay as long as you need. He settled onto the couch in her sitting room, and she curled up beside him, her head resting on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and feel the rumble in his chest when he spoke. I need to warn you about what's coming. Tomorrow, we'll need to make a formal announcement. The entire kingdom will know you're my mate. There will be celebrations, but there will also be challenges. Wolves who question your worthiness, packs who think I've made a mistake, political alliances that are going to shift because people had other plans for who I'd choose. What do I do? You stand beside me. You hold your head high, and you let them see that I chose you, that fate chose you, and that's the only validation you need. I don't want to embarrass you. Impossible. You could never embarrass me. His arms tightened around her. You're my mate, Athena, my equal, my queen. And I will spend every day proving to you that you deserve this. She fell asleep like that, wrapped in his warmth, his scent, his protection. For the first time in 16 years, she felt safe. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a moment of panic before she remembered where she was. The couch beside her was empty, but there was a note in bold handwriting. Had to handle some urgent business. Helena will help you prepare for the day. See you at breakfast. V. Helena appeared within minutes of Athena waking, carrying what looked like half a wardrobe. Good morning! The Alpha King wants you properly dressed before the formal announcement. We have several options. The next hour was a whirlwind of trying on clothes, being measured, having her hair styled by someone Helena brought in specifically for that purpose. By the time they were done, Athena barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress was simple but elegant. A deep forest green that brought out her eyes, fitted but not restrictive. Her dark hair had been brushed until it shone, then styled in loose waves that made her look sophisticated instead of wild. Someone had even found shoes that fit her, soft leather boots that were more comfortable than anything she'd ever worn. You look beautiful, Helena said warmly. Ready to meet your public? Athena's stomach clenched with nerves. What if they hate me? Some will love you. Most will be too busy trying to figure out what this means for their own positions to care much either way. That's politics. She squeezed Athena's hand gently. But you have the Alpha King's support, and that's worth more than all the approval in the world. The formal breakfast was held in a dining room that could have seated 50 people, though only about 20 were present. They were Victor's inner circle, Athena realized, his advisors, his top warriors, the wolves who actually ran the Northern Kingdom. They all stood when she entered, a gesture of respect that made her want to disappear. Victor was at the head of the table, and his face lit up when he saw her. Athena, come, sit beside me. There was an empty chair to his right, the position of honor. As she made her way to it, she could feel every eye on her, assessing, judging, calculating. Everyone, this is Athena, my mate, your future queen. Victor's tone brooked no argument. She'll be learning pack governance and will eventually take an active role in kingdom affairs. I expect everyone here to support her, protect her, and treat her with the respect her position demands. There were murmurs of acknowledgement, varying degrees of genuine versus forced enthusiasm. An older man with gray hair and sharp eyes spoke up. Alpha King, with all due respect, there are protocols for these things. A royal mating requires council approval, a period of assessment, verification of bloodlines. The mate bond is not subject to council approval, Counselor Thane. Fate doesn't care about our protocols. Nevertheless, there are traditions. The kingdom will accept my mate, or they will answer to me personally. Victor's power filled the room like a physical force. Are we clear? Yes, Alpha King. But Athena could see it in Counselor Thane's eyes. This wasn't over. He was already calculating, planning, looking for ways to undermine her before she could gain any real power. The rest of the breakfast passed in awkward small talk and political discussions that went over Athena's head. She ate carefully, mindful of Dr. Marin's warnings, and tried not to flinch every time someone's gaze landed on her. After breakfast, Victor pulled her aside. I have a council meeting I can't avoid. It's going to take most of the day. But tonight, there's a formal dinner to announce our mating to the pack leaders who are currently in residence. I need you there. What do I do? Stand beside me. Look confident even if you're terrified. Don't let them see fear. they'll exploit it. He cupped her face gently. You survived alone in the forest for 16 years. You can survive a dinner party. What if I use the wrong fork, or say something stupid, or... Then you'll be human. Well, wolf. You know what I mean. He kissed her forehead, a gesture that sent warmth flooding through her. Helena will help you prepare. And remember, you're my mate. That makes you untouchable. But as Athena watched him leave, surrounded by his guards and advisors, she couldn't shake the feeling that being untouchable to him didn't mean she was safe from everyone else. The rest of the day was a blur of preparation. Helena taught her basic etiquette, which glass was for water versus wine, how to properly greet pack leaders of various ranks, the formal phrases she should use. A young woman named Ivy was assigned as her personal assistant and helped her dress for the dinner in a gown that made the morning's dress look casual by comparison. It was midnight blue, fitted to show off what little figure her malnourished body had, with silver embroidery that caught the light when she moved. Her hair was pinned up in an elaborate style, with a few strategic curls framing her face. "You look like a queen," Ivy said, her eyes shining with genuine admiration. Athena looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, someone elegant, someone who might actually belong in a palace. But inside, she was still the terrified Omega who'd slept in a barn 3 days ago. The dinner was held in the grand ballroom, and Athena's breath caught when she saw it. Hundreds of candles cast flickering light over tables laden with more food than she'd seen in her entire life. Pack leaders from across the northern kingdom filled the room, dressed in their finest, all conversations stopping abruptly when Victor entered with Athena on his arm. The silence was deafening. Then Victor spoke, his voice carrying effortlessly across the massive space. "Leaders of the Northern Kingdom, I present to you Athena, my fated mate and your future queen." The applause that followed was polite but stunned. Athena could feel the weight of their stares, could practically hear their thoughts. She's nobody. She's not fit to be queen. What was he thinking? As they made their way to the head table, wolves bowed and curtsied, but Athena could see the calculation in their eyes. Some were already planning how to use this development to their advantage. Others looked genuinely concerned for the kingdom. And then she saw Nora. The she-wolf was dressed to kill in a blood-red gown that showed off her warrior's physique to devastating effect. Her platinum hair was styled in intricate braids, and her ice-blue eyes were fixed on Athena with undisguised hatred. "How lovely," Nora said as they passed, her voice pitched just loud enough to be heard. "The Alpha King has found his mate in the most unexpected of places." "Careful, Nora." But Nora just smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "Of course, Alpha King. I'm simply happy for you both. Though I do wonder how someone with no training, no education, no understanding of pack politics will manage the responsibilities of being queen. The role is so demanding." Athena felt her face flush, but before she could respond, Victor's hand tightened on her arm. "Then it's fortunate she'll have my full support while she learns. Unless you're volunteering to help with her education, Nora? I'm sure your father would be thrilled to know you're serving your future queen so generously." The implication was clear. Nora could either accept Athena's position or admit she was being insubordinate to the Alpha King himself. "Of course, Alpha King. I live to serve." But her eyes promised murder. The dinner itself was an exercise in endurance. Athena sat beside Victor, trying to eat properly, trying to remember all the etiquette Helena had taught her, trying not to visibly panic every time someone addressed her directly. A pack leader from the Eastern Territory, a gruff alpha named Magnus, leaned across the table. "So, Athena, what exactly qualifies you to be queen? Besides the mate bond, I mean." The table went quiet. It was a direct challenge, and everyone knew it. Athena felt her throat close up. What could she possibly say? That she could track prey through a forest? That she knew which plants were edible and which were poison? That she could survive on nothing for days at a time? But Victor's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently, and something in his touch gave her courage. Nothing. She met Magnus's eyes directly. "I have no training, no education, no experience in governance or politics. I'm a Packless Omega who's been surviving alone since I was 6 years old." She could see surprise flash across several faces. They'd expected defensiveness, excuses, or Victor to answer for her. "But I know what it's like to be invisible, to be treated as worthless, to be the wolf that everyone looks through instead of at. And if being queen means I can change that for even one other Omega, then I'll learn whatever I need to learn. I'll work twice as hard as anyone expects, and I'll prove that worth isn't determined by bloodline or rank." The silence that followed was different this time, thoughtful instead of judgmental. Then Magnus threw back his head and laughed, a booming sound that made several wolves jump. "Well said. I like her, Victor. She's got spine." "She does indeed." The rest of the dinner passed more easily after that. Athena still made mistakes, used the wrong fork once, forgot a formal title, stumbled over a phrase in pack protocol. But Victor was there beside her the entire time, steady and supportive. It wasn't until later, when they were finally alone in Victor's private study, that he let his guard down. "That was a nightmare." He poured himself a drink, then stopped. "I'm sorry. Do you want one?" "I've never had alcohol." "Never?" She shook her head. When you were focused on survival, luxuries like alcohol didn't even register. "Then we'll skip it. Dr. Marin would probably have my head anyway." He set the glass down untouched and pulled her into his arms instead. "You did beautifully tonight. I know it was hard." "I made so many mistakes." "Minor ones. And you recovered from all of them." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes intense. "Do you know what I saw tonight? I saw every wolf in that room underestimating you. And then I saw you prove them wrong with one honest answer. Magnus is one of the most influential alphas in the kingdom, and you won him over without even trying." "Nora hates me." "Nora hates anyone who stands between her and power. She'll be dealt with." "She's dangerous." "So am I, and I won't let her anywhere near you." But even as he said it, even as he held her close and promised protection, Athena couldn't shake the feeling that danger was coming, whether Victor could prevent it or not. That night, she slept in her own quarters again, though Victor stayed with her until she drifted off. When she woke the next morning, there was another note. "Pack council all day. Helena has tutors lined up for you. I'll see you tonight. V." The tutors were intensive. A stern woman named Magistrate Cole spent 4 hours drilling her on pack law and governance structure. A younger man named Finn taught her basic reading and writing skills she should have learned as a child. Helena herself covered etiquette and protocol. By the time dinner came, Athena's head was spinning with information. "We can slow down if it's too much," Helena offered. No, I need to learn this. I need to be ready. Ready for what? For when they try to prove I'm not good enough? Helena's expression softened. You know what I've learned in 40 years of serving royal wolves? The ones who are truly fit to lead are the ones who doubt themselves the most, the ones who know they have something to prove. It's the arrogant ones who are certain they deserve power that make the worst leaders. That evening, Victor returned looking even more exhausted than the night before. The council is pushing for a formal assessment period before officially recognizing you as queen. They want you to pass tests: governance, combat, pack law, strategy. Combat? I can't fight. Exactly. It's a setup designed to make you fail. He paced the length of her sitting room, his agitation evident in every movement. They're using tradition as a weapon, claiming that any wolf who wants to be queen needs to prove they can protect the pack. Then I'll learn to fight. He stopped, turning to stare at her. Athena, you said I have spine. Let me prove it. If they want combat skills, I'll develop them. If they want governance knowledge, I'll study until I know pack law better than they do. I won't let them use my weaknesses to delegitimize our bond. Victor crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms with enough force to take her breath away. You are remarkable. Do you know that? I'm terrified. So am I. But we're terrified together. Over the next 3 weeks, Athena threw herself into preparation with the same desperate intensity she'd once used to survive in the forest. She woke before dawn to train with Victor's head warrior, a massive alpha named Garrett, who was surprisingly patient with her complete lack of combat experience. You're too small to overpower anyone, Garrett explained during their first session. So we're going to focus on speed, evasion, and using an opponent's strength against them. The training was brutal. Athena ended each session bruised, exhausted, and aching in muscles she didn't know she had. But slowly, painfully, she began to improve. During the day, she studied. Magistrate Cole drilled her relentlessly on pack law, governance structures, historical treaties, and political protocol. Finn helped her improve her reading and writing, moving from basic literacy to more complex texts. Helena taught her how to navigate social situations, how to read power dynamics, how to hold her own in conversations with wolves who had decades more experience than she did. And every evening, Victor would find her, wherever she was studying or training, and pull her away for a few stolen hours of peace. They'd eat together, talk about their days, and slowly, carefully, build the foundation of a relationship that was so much more than just a mate bond. But underneath it all, Athena could feel the pressure building. The assessment was approaching, and with it, the very real possibility that she would fail, publicly, humiliatingly, in front of the entire kingdom. And Nora was always there, lurking at the edges of events, her cold blue eyes watching, waiting for Athena to stumble. The night before the assessment, Athena couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, looking out over the valley, trying to calm the panic that was threatening to overwhelm her. A knock at the door made her turn. It's me. Victor entered, and without a word, pulled her into his arms. You're going to be fine tomorrow. What if I'm not? What if I fail? Then we deal with it together. But you won't fail, Athena. I've watched you these past 3 weeks. I've seen how hard you've worked, how much you've learned. You're ready. I'm not, though. I'll never be what they expect. I'll never be like Nora or the other she-wolves who were raised for this. Good, I don't want you to be like them. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I want you to be exactly who you are. A survivor, a fighter, someone who understands what it means to be powerless and refuses to let that define her. That's what makes you perfect for this role. I love you. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she felt her face flush. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. Not for that. Never for that. He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. I love you too. From the moment I saw you in that inspection line, trying to be invisible, I knew you were it for me. My mate, my queen, my everything. They completed the mate bond that night, sealing their connection in a way that made the previous weeks of restraint seem almost comical. When it was done, when they lay tangled together in the aftermath, Athena could feel the bond thrumming between them like a second heartbeat, stronger, deeper, permanent. Now let them try to challenge you. You're mine in every way that matters. And you're mine. And I'm yours. The assessment was held in the grand training arena, with what looked like every pack leader in the Northern Kingdom in attendance. Athena stood in the center of the arena, dressed in simple training clothes, trying to control her breathing. Victor sat at the head table, his face carefully neutral, but she could feel his support through the bond. Counselor Thane stepped forward to announce the assessment structure. Athena, you will be tested in 3 areas. First, combat. You will face a challenger in hand-to-hand combat. Second, governance. You will be questioned on pack law and protocol. Third, leadership. You will be presented with a crisis scenario and must demonstrate your ability to make strategic decisions under pressure. I understand. For the combat trial, we call forth our challenger, Nora Whitmore. Of course it was Nora. The she-wolf entered the arena to applause from her supporters, dressed in combat gear that showed off her warrior's build. She moved with the confident grace of someone who'd been training to fight since childhood. Athena, by contrast, had 3 weeks of training. This was impossible. But Garrett's voice echoed in her head from their sessions. Don't try to match her strength. Use your advantages, speed, unpredictability, and the fact that she'll underestimate you. I'll try not to hurt you too badly, Nora said as they circled each other. Wouldn't want to damage the Alpha King's pet. The word was designed to infuriate, but Athena forced herself to stay calm. Anger would make her sloppy. Nora attacked first, a powerful straight punch that would have ended the fight immediately if it had connected. But Athena wasn't there. She'd already moved, using the speed and evasion Garrett had drilled into her. The fight was brutal and one-sided. Nora landed several hits that left Athena gasping, her ribs screaming in protest. But Athena refused to stay down. Every time Nora knocked her to the ground, she got back up. And slowly, she began to see patterns in Nora's attacks. The she-wolf was overconfident, telegraphing her moves, leaving openings. On Nora's next attack, Athena didn't dodge. Instead, she stepped inside the punch, using Nora's momentum against her in a throw that Garrett had made her practice 1,000 times. Nora went down hard, and before she could recover, Athena had her in a submission hold. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Let me go! Yield. The match goes to Athena, Counselor Thane announced, sounding thoroughly displeased. Athena released Nora and stood, her body screaming in protest. Through the bond, she could feel Victor's pride and relief. The governance trial was next, an hour of rapid-fire questions about pack law, treaty obligations, hierarchy protocols. Athena drew on everything Magistrate Cole had taught her, answering carefully and precisely. She didn't know everything, but she knew enough. And when she didn't know something, she admitted it honestly rather than trying to bluff, a strategy Helena had suggested. Satisfactory, Counselor Thane admitted when the questioning was done. The leadership trial was the hardest. They presented her with a scenario, a border dispute between two packs threatening to escalate into violence. She had to propose a solution, defend it against challenges, and demonstrate strategic thinking. Athena thought of everything she'd learned, everything she'd experienced. She thought about being powerless, about what it felt like to be caught between forces bigger than yourself. The real issue isn't the border, it's resources. Both packs are competing for the same hunting grounds because they're growing and need more territory. So instead of focusing on where the line is, we need to address the underlying scarcity. Expand hunting rights into neutral territory. Establish shared resources. Create incentives for cooperation instead of competition. The questions that followed were pointed and aggressive, but Athena held her ground. She didn't have all the answers, but she had a framework. Address root causes, prioritize pack welfare over politics, and never forget that real wolves would suffer if the wrong decision was made. When it was over, Counselor Thane conferred with the other judges for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he stood. The council finds that Athena has demonstrated sufficient competency in combat, governance, and leadership to be formally recognized as mate to the Alpha King. It wasn't enthusiastic, but it was acceptance. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some applauded genuinely, others politely, and some not at all. But it didn't matter. She'd done it. Victor was there in an instant, pulling her into his arms despite the very public setting. I knew you could do it. I can barely stand. Then let me carry you. And he did, scooping her up despite her protests, carrying her from the arena while the crowd whispered and stared. That evening, there was a formal ceremony. Athena stood beside Victor in a gown that must have cost a fortune, while a high priestess bound their hands with a ceremonial rope and spoke the ancient words that made their mating official in the eyes of the kingdom. From this day forward, you are bound, Alpha to Luna, king to queen, mate to mate. What fate has joined, let no wolf tear asunder. The rope glowed briefly with an otherworldly light, the old magic recognizing and blessing their bond. I present to you Athena Steele, Queen of the Northern Kingdom. The applause this time was louder, more genuine. She'd earned it, proven herself in front of everyone. But as Athena scanned the crowd, she saw Nora standing at the back, her face a mask of cold fury. This wasn't over. The battle might be won, but the war was just beginning. Over the next months, Athena threw herself into her role as queen. She worked with Victor to implement reforms, better protections for omegas, resources for packless wolves, programs to identify and support vulnerable pack members before they ended up living in barns. She discovered she had a talent for seeing patterns, for understanding the human element in political situations that others overlooked. Victor began consulting her on major decisions, valuing her perspective precisely because it was so different from the traditional pack leadership mindset. But Nora remained a constant threat. She couldn't challenge Athena openly anymore, not after the assessment, but she worked behind the scenes, spreading rumors, undermining initiatives, turning other high-ranking wolves against the queen who'd come from nothing. It came to a head 6 months after the mating ceremony. Athena was in her office, reviewing proposals for a new Omega support program, when Ivy burst in looking terrified. "My queen, it's the Alpha." "King, there's been an accident!" Athena's heart stopped. Through the bond, she could feel Victor's pain, his fury, He wasn't dead. Thank the moon, he wasn't dead. She ran through the palace corridors, following the pull of the mate bond, until she reached the training grounds where a crowd had gathered. Victor was on the ground, a training sword through his shoulder, blood pooling beneath him. Dr. Marin was already there working frantically, and standing nearby, looking shocked and horrified, and just a little too perfect, was Nora. "It was an accident. We were sparring and he slipped." "Liar." Athena's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She'd never felt rage like this, never let her wolf this close to the surface. "Victor doesn't slip. He's been training since he could walk." "How dare you accuse me? I would never!" "Garrett, check the training sword." Garrett, who'd been standing nearby looking murderous, moved to examine the weapon. His expression darkened. "The balance is off. Someone tampered with the weight distribution. It would make the wielder overextend on a thrust." The crowd gasped. This wasn't an accident. This was attempted assassination. "Nora Whitmore, you are under arrest for attempted regicide. Guards, take her into custody." "You can't do this! I'm the beta's daughter! I have rights! The council will—" "The council will do what their queen commands." Victor's voice was strained with pain, but firm. "Take her away." As the guards dragged Nora off, still screaming protests, Athena dropped to her knees beside Victor. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," Dr. Marin said. "But he'll live. We need to get him to the medical wing immediately." The next 24 hours were the longest of Athena's life. Victor survived surgery, but the wound had been serious. Another inch and it would have hit his heart. When he finally woke, Athena was there, holding his hand. "Hey, you scared me." "Takes more than a backstabbing she-wolf to kill me." He squeezed her hand gently. "You handled everything perfectly. Took command, secured the evidence, protected the kingdom. You were every inch a queen." "I was terrified I'd lose you." "Never. I'm not going anywhere. We're in this forever, remember?" Nora's trial was swift and decisive. The evidence was overwhelming, not just the tampered weapon, but communications with other wolves who'd been working to destabilize Athena's position, plans for a coup if the assassination had succeeded. The sentence was exile from the Northern Kingdom, her rank and privileges stripped. As Nora was led away in chains, Athena felt no triumph, only relief that the threat was finally neutralized. A year later, Athena stood in the same arena where she'd fought for acceptance. But this time she was there as a confident queen, announcing a comprehensive reform package that would fundamentally reshape how the Northern Kingdom treated its most vulnerable members. "For too long, we've measured worth by combat prowess and bloodline. But a pack is only as strong as its weakest member. These reforms will ensure that every wolf, from the highest alpha to the lowest omega, has dignity, opportunity, and protection." The applause was thunderous. Victor stood beside her, his hand at her back, his pride in her evident to everyone watching. "They love you. I think they might actually respect me." "I could have told you that months ago. You've done more for this kingdom in a year than most queens do in a lifetime." That night, as they stood on the balcony of their chambers, looking out over the valley, Athena thought about how far she'd come. From a Packless Omega sleeping in a barn to a queen reshaping an entire kingdom. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. Believe it. You earned every bit of it. He pulled her close, and through the bond, she could feel his love, his pride, his absolute certainty in their partnership. And this is just the beginning. We're going to build something remarkable together. Athena leaned into his warmth, feeling safe and valued and loved in a way she'd never imagined possible. The girl who'd been invisible had become impossible to ignore. The Omega who'd been worthless had become invaluable. And the wolf who'd been alone had found her pack, her purpose, and her place. She'd stood in the Omega line and been chosen by a king. But more importantly, she'd chosen to fight for herself, to believe she deserved more, to become the queen the Northern Kingdom needed. And as she stood there in Victor's arms, looking out over the kingdom she now helped rule, Athena knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Did you like the story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, tell us which state you're watching from so I can give you a shout out in the next video. Shout out from our friends in Texas, England, New York, Canada, and more. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay updated on our next uploads. Thanks for watching!